Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Sex, Lies, and Consciousness with your luscious hostess, May Vu, broadcasting live every Monday at 12 noon Pacific Time.
Hello, everyone. This is May, and happy Friday. Well, I'm doing another show out of sequence, but that's all right. And today I'm talking with a lovely, lovely young woman that I just met over Facebook. Again, all of my guests comes in through Facebook. It's amazing the gem that I find on Facebook. And we're talking about mastering sexuality. I'm doing a little bit of a play on words on this one because Julianne did a master on sexuality. And I tell you, I grew up finishing high school, being on AP, all this good high grades and everything. And then I went to school to become an engineer, that I can have a good job and all this stuff. I never thought to master in sexuality. Now that I'm 47, I wish I had, because that would have been so much more fun and so much to learn about. So I can't wait to discover more about what Juliana learned from her thesis and what she got exposed to, and really having an academic knowledge about sexuality. And the reason why I think this is important for the audience and bring it to you is that, I think we're so we learn everything from like we learn to eat by our parents showing us to eat every day. We learn to poop and pee, by lots of patience and lots of encouragement and lots of careful attention from our parents and caretaker and even preschool to help us learn to poop and pee, right? We learn to the alphabet. We go to school. We learn a trade. We go to school and all these things. And yet, one of the most important things about our life is our sexuality. We don't go to school for that. We have one stinking sex ed class somewhere in middle school that scared the bejesus out of us and make it all bad, dirty, and wrong and tell us not to touch this thing. And that's it. Our parents are weird about it. Our teachers are weird about it. The kids around us are weird about it. The boys are weird about it. The girls are weird. And we expect to have a thriving life in this world around sexuality. Crazy. So anyway, I just am so thrilled that there are masters in sexuality now, and that I think we should really take some classes and learn. And so, Julianne, jump in, honey, and just first introduce yourself. Give them a little stat about yourself, like your age and where you live, and what's this mastery in sexuality about?
All right. My name is Julianne Carroll. I'm 30. I live in San Francisco. I've been there for about 6 years. And like you already said, I got my master's in sexuality studies at San Francisco State University. And in addition to that, I've done a lot of work in the queer community. I do coaching with clients around relationships and relationship skills and sex and sexuality. I deal with a lot of issues around open relationships or alternative or non-traditional ways of relating to people.
So how did you get to be curious about things like that? Because I know, I did do something in college. I did have a minor in psychology, and oh my gosh, I thought that was like walking over the edge, just learning about that. But to be interested in open relationships and all that stuff at such a young age, like what were your childhood like, or what were you exposed to that has you be so open-minded?
I think a lot of what happened for me was I started to realize I was queer in high school, and I grew up in Boston, and in some ways Boston is really conservative. So I felt from a really young age that the way my sexuality was didn't really belong, and that I was really different from people around me, and I had to keep it a secret. So I think that's what really started a really large curiosity around sex, sexuality, why being different sexually or having a different sexual orientation is so threatening to people. What is it about us that is scared of people that are different in that way? So I think the exploration started pretty young, like as an early
So you had
adolescent.
an advantage over me.
I mean, I really actually do. I see it as an advantage. I see, like, being queer and figuring it out fairly young as something that really jump-started my self-development and, like, self-exploration in a way that my straight counterparts often don't get to do until they're older. So.
Yeah, this is so interesting. I never thought of it that way before, but yeah, because I was born, Catholic in Vietnam and, very traditional cultural, traditional relationship. And so I was so into that is the right way to do things. I never had to explore or never even thought that I should explore. And translating that to what is happening in our society, it's true, isn't it? I mean, like when we're born, quote unquote, normal, please forgive that word, like we think that is the box and everyone should fit that box and that's all we know. But having born on the fringe, on the edge, like where, with sexuality, where you were born, that's so cool because it's like, it made it real. It made us like, no, we really need to look at this. We need to study this.
Yeah, and I feel like that happens to a lot of queer people. I do feel like in queer communities in general, there is you're already outside the norm. You're already sort of going against what larger culture expects of you. So there's a lot more freedom to explore sex, sexuality. There's a lot more openness for women to be sexual in queer spaces versus I think what happens a lot in straight culture. So I just feel like there's a lot of space for exploration, and I think that was sort of the beginning for me. Obviously, not every queer person becomes a sex educator or goes to school for sexuality, but I think that sort of planted the seed. Like why is it different?
Let's go there for a second. You don't have to generalize, and you don't have to like speak for everyone. Just your own experience. Like when you got to be I love that you said you were encouraged to explore around your sexuality. How were you encouraged? Because let me tell you, this is how I was encouraged. May, half the men in the world are rapists and the other half are drunk. So you should stay home and you should never touch anything. And if you touch a penis and you put, your hand to your eyes, you'll go blind. That's pretty much what my encouragement was. So I didn't have sex until I was 21, and I only had one sex partner until I was 39. So that's pretty much how I was raised. How were you encouraged around your sexuality?
I don't know that I would say that I was necessarily encouraged around my sexuality. I think that once I came into the queer community, there was a lot more space. But, I definitely didn't grow up in a really sexually repressive environment. I think for the most part, my mom is pretty open about sexuality. I'd say she's pretty sexually empowered herself. She was always really comfortable talking about it. Yeah. I also come from a Catholic background, so I definitely had, my family wasn't very religious, but there was definitely, that was there, like definitely on my dad's side of the family, more than my mom's. So I wasn't free from like the religious pressures or the shame and the guilt. That was all still there for me. Like I think that's a lot of what I was dealing with when I was coming to terms with my own sexuality and coming out of the closet and all of that. But I think, like, in my immediate family, I definitely grew up with the feeling that sex was okay, it was okay to talk about. I feel like there was a general sense of openness, but I also think that even with a general sense of openness in your own family, like, we're all still affected by the larger culture. So even though my family wasn't, like, particularly homophobic or wasn't particularly...
How was being queer encourage you to explore more? How, like you like in general,
I think that because for me personally and other queer people, I think being queer, you're already outside the box. You have to examine your sexuality. You have to, a lot of people go through a process of figuring out that they're different than other people or figuring out that they're different than other people expect them to be and having to really get clear on what that means. And I think that type of self-reflection and self-exploration opens up the floodgates to look at a lot of different things, to look at your gender, to look at who you're attracted to, why you're attracted to those people, how you want to express yourself. I just think that, when you challenge a really, really large societal norm, there's less pressure to live by all the other ones, and so it opens up space. And that's how I think being queer.
I think that's such a great question. Like, I don't think we ask that question to ourselves often enough. Like, who are you attracted to, and why are you attracted to that person? But, I mean, for me, the party line was, you should be attracted to the cutest boy and someone who has the potential, show some potential that he's going to be a great husband and he's going to be a great provider.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But that has nothing to do with sex.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reasons why we're attracted to other people are really complex, and gender is just one of them, but it's certainly, like, one that we get the most hardcore messaging around, Like, women have to be attracted to men and men have to be attracted to women. That's just a really intense pressure in our culture.
Yep. Okay, so fast forward. So then you went to school and you took this degree, and you had a shift in degree. First, you studied polyamory relationship, and then you shifted to societal sexism, stigma against sex worker.
And stigma against sex workers and how it affects their work and their relationship to their work.
Yeah, like, wow, that's a big ass topic. How did you get there, honey?
How did I get to that topic? The poly one or the sex worker one?
Well, let's start with the sex worker one, and then we'll work our way backward to the polyamory one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I live in San Francisco. There's a large community of people doing activism around sex work issues.
Yeah.
So just being a sex educator, being in the world of sex educators, I know a lot of people who do various types of sex work, and I see a lot of the stigma that they face. I see a lot of the struggles that happen. And I also think it's a really, really complex issue. Mm-hmm. But I just became interested in stigma in general, how stigma against certain groups affects their sexuality and their sexual expression, and then in particular women who do sex work, and like why they do what they do, and the culture, the feelings our culture has around sex work and how that impacts them.
So, but that's also part of why I find this. I wanted to capture this conversation with you. It's just like, we see this, but it's at such a far away place, and you kind of came close to this arena. So I wanted to like slow down and just like go into it a bit. Like what are, I know I'm asking an obvious question, but I think it deserves to be teased out. It's like, what are the complexity about being a sex worker that you see?
What are the complexities that I see?
Yeah, you said that you said being a sex worker is a very complex issue. So it's just like, what are they? It's because I hate the fact that we hold it as sex workers just mean you're a woman and somehow you end up on the street and you're trying to get men to pay for sex. We just stop thinking beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's definitely not only women who are sex workers, so that's the
there you go.
Thing.
I think we're uncovering a lot of my stigma too. There we go. Let's start with me.
I know. I mean, a lot of women are sex workers. There's lots of transgender people who are sex workers. There's men who are sex workers. The complexities.
Right.
Well, I think that first of all, I think a lot of people do sex work because of economic reasons. I mean, I feel like that's the most obvious one. I feel like it's really tied into needing money, and it's obviously there's a large demand for sex, there's a large demand for sexual pleasure, so, and that's never going to go away really. So I think that our society kind of has conflict around it because it's obviously something, our sex and our sexuality is obviously something that's important, and a lot of people don't feel like their needs are being met in that way. So like a lot of other things in capitalist society, we commodify things, we purchase things to meet our needs, and sex is definitely one of those things. I think that it gets complicated because a lot of people are raised to believe that sex is supposed to be an intimate thing between two people who love each other, who are in a committed relationship, hopefully heterosexual, hopefully marriage, hopefully with children. So there's this like idealized circumstance where we're told we're supposed to supposed to have sex in a certain environment.
Right. I'm seeing something here. It's like we were told to have sex as a relationship, as a tool in a relationship. We weren't taught to have sex because it's an expression or an understanding of who we are. It's almost like sex is a tool to get where we want to get, which is we want to be married, we want to have a companion, we want to have a lifetime partner, and we want to have children. And so sex is a tool. But we're never taught to have sex as an exploration. Recreation, exploration, healing tools, understanding ourselves tools, all that stuff.
Absolutely. Plus, I think that when you're talking about female sex workers, I do think the stigma is considerable against women who are sex workers because women are told they're not supposed to be slutty, they're not supposed to be promiscuous, like regardless of a money exchange. But then on top of that, if you're having sex for money or if you're being sexual or whatever type of sex worker you are, you know, you're not in a relationship. It's not headed towards marriage. There may or may not be any level of intimacy there. But so I think it really challenges a lot of the assumptions we have about women and how women are supposed to be sexually and the purpose of sex. So there's a lot of complexity around it.
And a lot of confusion. And so because we only see women should be a certain way around sex, when we see other women doing other things with sex and having different ranges with it, it seems right and wrong. It seems like, oh, that's wrong.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, like, slut shaming, and there's a big stigma against being a whore or being promiscuous or being perceived as being promiscuous.
Right. And it's all in us, too, because we can't handle that in ourselves. It's like we don't like our desire. We don't like our expression. We don't like it when we get horny over a certain thing that doesn't make sense to our mind.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a certain level of, like, fear of our own desire that happens with sex a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, again, like, going back to the queer thing, I think that comes up for people, and that came up for me, like, when I realized that I was attracted to women, I was terrified because I felt like it meant something was wrong with me. So I think that there's all sorts of things our society says are wrong sexually, and we're supposed to stay within the box of the right way to be sexual and the right way to express ourselves sexually. But when we have desires that are outside of that, I think people are scared of them. And I think that we're scared of them in ourselves, and we're scared of other people's desires, and we're scared of what could happen if we follow those desires. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can so relate to that because I remember when I was married with my ex-husband, and we had a great marriage. We talked about everything, and I was in school in getting my master's degree, and I had a friend who was a lesbian, and she and we got along really well, and I just loved hanging out with her, being with her, and over the 2 years, you know, our friendship just grew, and I just was so comfortable with her, and then I felt attracted to her, and I didn't know what to do with that. And then I went home and I told her that, and I told him that, and I was just kind of like really scared. And I went through like a whole weekend of really just allowing myself to tiptoe in that water of like, oh my gosh, could it really be true that I'm attracted to this woman, like beyond what's appropriate, you know, what I thought, like, see, the word appropriate comes in. And then I was just kind of like, oh my God. And then what does that mean about me? And here's the biggest thing for me to look at was it was all about social economic placing in society. So for me, it was like I'm an Asian immigrant person, so I self-identify as an Asian immigrant person. It comes with a whole set of thinking, you know, like what I'm entitled to and what I'm worth and all that stuff that I had to undo. And then so I married a white guy, so it somehow intuitively felt like I elevated myself in the social scale. Right? Like somehow I'm safer and I'm more in than out. I don't know what I'm in, but I'm more in than out. And then the thought of leaving him and being with a woman, I felt like I just dropped down some invisible ladder all the way to the bottom.
Mhm.
I couldn't let that happen. And it was just so fascinating to me.
I mean, that's real. I mean, that's like privilege and how privilege plays out. And I think that that's a huge part of why people are afraid. I think that there's real benefits to following what people tell you you're supposed to do. And there's tangible privilege to being in heterosexual relationships. And, like, you know, it's real. It's not
Yeah, it's not made up. This is how society runs. It's just that we are not verbal about it. It's very intuitive, and it's also just like, oh my goodness. And so then back to the sex workers. So the female sex worker have this stigma against them, right? Our confusion about how women should be around sex get put onto them. The whole needing money and poverty gets put onto them.
Totally.
And are they treated differently than male sex workers?
I think so. I mean, I didn't
tell me what you find out.
Yeah, so I interviewed female sex workers in San Francisco, female woman identified sex workers. So I didn't interview any transgender sex workers. And I interviewed one woman who was a former call girl, one woman who ran her own bachelor party service, a couple women who work at the Lusty Lady in San Francisco, someone who does BDSM, pro-dom work. So I didn't interact with many male sex workers, but I really do think that there is a difference in the level of stigma, because I think that our society expects men to be sexually promiscuous. That's just what we expect. We think that, like, oh, that's just how men are. Men want to have sex all the time. Men don't want to be monogamous. Like, these are all stereotypes we get told. But it's acceptable for men to have sex with a lot of people. Like, men don't really get shamed for being slutty. Men get praised. Men get called studs or, like, congratulated on sexual prowess or whatever. So, I mean, I think that, like, you can't ignore, like, the gendered aspect of stigma towards sex workers. I think there's stigma on the whole in general against sex workers, but I do think it's particularly severe for women because of these ideas we have about sexuality.
Well, one of the things that I just got in touch with for myself when I'm listening to you is, like, I'm like, oh my God, I had this. This is why I love calling my show Sex, Lies, and Consciousness, because we're talking about sex, busting up my lies, and then, oh God, my consciousness is just raised. You know, it's like, oh, there's another blind spot for me. So what I'm getting is, like, when you said about female and male sex worker, I saw a clear assumption. I'm like, oh, when I think of a male sex worker, I think of he's there to serve men. So then he, in my mind, get put in the box of this is about gay men. So it's isolated, it's over there, so it doesn't threaten my heterosexual world. And then I'm like, well, how do you know, right? And then I'm like, well, what are the number of male prostitutes for women? Is that a demand? Are there women using that? You know, that kind of stuff. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So when I think of it that way, then somehow now I can feel it's more threatened or more into my backyard or something.
And so you feel more threatened by that than, like, the idea of, like, heterosexual male partners seeing female sex workers?
Yeah. So see, all of these things are just unconscious stuff that I didn't know I have, right? So it's just so fascinating for me to see, to have the stigma that, you know, a male sex worker is there to serve men, and so that's not related to me. So that's okay. They're just a small number of group, and I just overlook them. They don't even exist in my book, right? But then when I try to, like, think about, oh God, male sex workers, oh my gosh, they do exist. Do they? You know, now I'm all confused, and I'm just kind of like, well, how many are there? How are they treated? You know, so it's like for the first time, I'm seeing a group of people that I never saw before.
Cool.
Yeah, anyway.
I mean, I do think that I'm sure it exists. I do think the demand is considerably less for women paying for male sex workers.
Yeah.
I think that that's actually, accurate, that like a lot of men doing sex work are doing sex work for other men. I think that men make up the vast majority of people who pay for sex or pay for sexual services.
Huh, that's interesting too. Us women were so busy repressing, suppressing, and closing our legs. And the men are like, okay, you know what, there's this energy, inside me, it's got to come out, and it's really good, and if I can't have it at home with you, then I'm going to have it, at a sex parlor or somewhere that would condone and support me around that.
Yeah, maybe. I think there's lots of reasons why that happens.
Yeah. And
I think one of them is that, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to take a completely different direction, so finish your thought.
Well, men also have more expendable income. I think that it has to do, on the whole, I think it has to do with sexuality. I think it has to do with how men and women are trained around their sexuality, what's allowed, what's not allowed. I also think it's economic. And I do think, for whatever reason, it's, I think, largely culture and training, but I do think that, a lot of women tend to want to experience sex and sexual relationships in the context of some relationship.
Right, because we're so trained to see sex and relationship as one thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily bad. That's a great choice for some people. It's just that, other people want to make other choices, and that's okay too.
That's right. So what else did you learn from that thesis about, the stigma, societal stigma? What are some things that we should know that we didn't know that actually do impact us?
Let's see. What are some things that people should know? Well, my documentary is actually available on the internet. It's called Sex Workers, Your Voice Counts. So that's what I actually did. I made a documentary. It was a short film, and it went to a bunch of different festivals around the United States. But a lot of what people talked about was the response by their communities, their family and friends. A lot of people feel like they have to keep it secret. A lot of people feel like if they were to tell people around them, then they would be shunned or they would be judged. Or another thing that sometimes happens is the women talked about being over-sexualized. So, people assuming or men assuming that if you do sex work, if you're a stripper, if you do BDSM work, then you're extremely sexually available to all men at any time, and you're interested in being sexualized all the time.
Right.
And so that's an interesting phenomenon that I think happens a lot. And
right. Somehow we made that assumption that just because you do sex work, then right. Yes, because our mind is so immature around this whole thing, so we just make some crazy assumptions. I can feel that assumption in my head too. I'm just like, oh yeah, I do have that assumption. It's like we just assume that they just can be available for sex 24/7 kind of thing.
Right, and I think that people assume that about slutty women or promiscuous women. I think people assume that if you have sex with a lot of people, then you're easy and you must just want to have sex with anybody and you have no standards and all that stuff. And I don't think that's true at all.
Right.
But I think people make those
That's
assumptions.
just part of our crazy shadow that we project out there. Our unchecked mind. Yeah.
Yeah, or that if you are easy or if you do have sex with a lot of people, that somehow cheapens it. That, you're not worth as much as a woman if you're, giving it away to everybody. I think that a lot of people think that.
Okay, so this is something that's useful. Somehow, how did it get tied to if I like sex and have lots of sex and enjoy sex with men, that means somehow my worth has gone down. That is so fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And yet we recycle this thoughts all the time and we don't check this thing. How did that get smooshed together? I know in the old days, you own woman, and so you got to keep them flawless and pretty and all this stuff, and that's how it got. But we're here now, and yet we still cling on to that.
Yeah, big time. I don't know, I think it goes back to our ideas about womanhood and what it means to be like a good girl. And it's like good girls are nice and kind and take care of people's feelings, and good girls, you know, are sexually available to their husbands or to their steady, committed male partners. But we also get a lot of mixed messaging, like the Madonna whore dichotomy, like you're supposed to be sexy and good in bed and sexually available and sexually adventurous, but not too much, because if you're too slutty, then nobody will want you. So it's like you kind of can't win. Yeah. And I think that a lot of it is just about, like, sexuality is powerful, and women's sexuality is really powerful, and it's a powerful thing when women or a group of women are really in touch and unapologetic about their sexuality.
I'm going to take a quick little break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the interviews that you had where women talk about the power of being a sex worker. Because I think there's a stigma that being a sex worker is all about victimized and being a victim and blah, 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 right? And there is so much power in here that rarely gets talked about, too.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, hang on.
Okay, great.
Is your marriage or relationship in crisis? Where one partner wants to expand into their sex and bring scary changes to the relationship, while the other partner is dug in, protective, and saying, "No way in hell is this going to happen." May knows this place well, and she can help both sides. She is truly amazing. Learn more about her specialty, crisis coaching for couples and individuals, at sexliesandconsciousness.com.
Okay, we're back. And just to tie it in with that little commercial, I do offer one complimentary session per week, per show. So when you're listening to this show, and if something stirred up for you, or if the commercial stirred up for you and you'd like to get some time with me, I offer a complimentary hour so that we can discover what is going on for you around these issues, whether it's work, life, career, but especially around relationship and sexuality. I'm really good at that, and it's going to change your life. So go to my website and just book a time with me. Okay, we're back with Julianne. Julianne, let's talk about that. What is so powerful about being a sex worker that is so misunderstood, that we don't even know about?
Well, a lot of the women talked about how healing their work felt, and how they could sense that they were really impacting the people that they interacted with. So one woman, Abby, talked about, she runs the bachelor party service and has a whole ton of women who do bachelor parties and strips around the West Coast. She talked a lot about how with some of the clients that she's worked with, sometimes people are just looking for intimacy, they're just looking for touch, they just want to be held, they just want to feel connected to other people. So I do feel like it takes a lot of work around connection, around how to be intimate with other people. I think it's like being a therapist in some ways for some women. That's how some of the women described it. So I think there's this stereotype that, like, it doesn't take any skills or any work, and you just, like, dance naked or open your legs and fuck somebody and that's it. And, it's really not true. I do think there's a lot of skill involved that people don't necessarily see.
Well, have you ever done pole dancing?
I've taken a couple classes.
Yeah, right.
Have you?
To me, I have. I actually have a pole at home too. But to me, that's the crazy part. It looks so easy, and it's like, oh, come on, that's just pole dancing. What's so hard about that? Oh my God, you get on that pole, and it's incredibly difficult, and lots of muscles that you don't know you have, that you need to have, and all this stuff, and to even flip and go upside down, it's just crazy, right? So to me, that's
absolutely.
I'm using that as a metaphor to compare to this, which is like, this is like, we think that all you have to do is open your legs, but oh no, there's so much art and so much skills, both physically and emotionally and spiritually, to really do a good job at this.
Yeah, and I think also the really important thing to remember, I think whenever anybody works in any form of the sex industry, and that could be even things that aren't about having sex at all, so coaching or sex therapy.
Yeah.
I think that because sex is such a delicate topic for so many people, there's so much charge. People carry a lot of shame, people carry guilt, so much feeling, and so much of who we are can get tied up in our sexualities. So I feel like you know, are a recipient of that all of the time. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to learn how to navigate those energies and how to work with those energies. And I think that it's not easy for people. I think that you have to figure out boundaries, just like in your sex life in general. But I think you have to be really firm about boundaries. You have to be clear about what you are and aren't willing to do. And I think especially when money comes into play, that can get really complicated for people.
Yeah, really. And it's so interesting because I do know a very dear friend of mine. She's a high-end escort, and she comes back just glorious. When she goes to an event, she gets gleeful and excited in the beginning, and then she does her event. I've never had the pleasure to attend one of those yet, but then afterwards, she just like high over the moon of like the healing quality, the joy that she had, the enjoyment that she had, and the gift that she was able to give to the men, and vice versa, and it just benefits her hugely.
Yeah,
and
for sure. And I also
I say that because I don't think sex workers' stories are really featured well like that. You know, in movies, I can't think of a movie that was really portray a powerful sex worker that lives happily ever after and does amazing things. You know, there's always some tragic ending to them and all this stuff, and I just think that's not always the case.
It's not always the case, and it is really complicated though, because you know there's a huge global industry around coercion into sex work and like underage people getting into sex work, and that's right. That can't be ignored. But the thing is it is complex. There are some people who gain a sense of power from it. It is a valid form of employment if someone wants to do it and chooses to do it. There's a lot of people who don't get to choose. There's a lot of people who don't want to, who have to. So it's important not to silence that and not to exclude those stories. And that's a huge, that's a huge amount of people that have that particular experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that, I'm like, don't even start me on that one, and especially being a Vietnamese woman, there's a deep connection to that pain of how Asian women are being kept, stolen, forced into these things, both by their parental and their societal and their social economic system, or literally being forced into, physically being forced into that. So it's just like, you're absolutely right. And there's so much of that story and a few very small handful of the story, like my girlfriend, or the importance of this, seeing this as a healing work or sacred healer work instead of a disgusting thing where men just go and take advantage of disadvantaged women or people. Yeah,
and I think that's sort of why I wanted to look at stigma in sex work, because I feel like so much of why sex work is the way it is because of that stigma, and that's what I wanted to really talk about. But it's not that inherently it's bad to do this, or it's inherently damaging to have sex in exchange for money, because that's actually just not true for some people. But I do think that the context of the context in which you're doing it is so important. So if you're in a culture that completely stigmatizes it, says that any woman who does sex work is a total slut and is worthless, and this, that, and the other, like, that's obviously going to shape your experience of it. So I really wanted to tease out, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. I think I just saw something. You just turned a light bulb on for me, because it's like all this time, society, when we protest against sex worker and all this stuff, we're like feel like no more noble. No, I'm I'm doing a noble cause to protect society and protect these women and everything. But in a way, we're the perpetrator. We're the one who could cause damage to them by holding on to this stigma, by not challenging our own assumptions and misunderstanding, or whatever that we have around this. That we're the one that separate them. We're the one that hurts them. We're the one that makes them feeling less than and cause damage to their life, actually.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of figuring out what you're actually speaking against, because it's important to speak against violence and coercion and abuse of people and forced slavery. Those are important things to speak against. But if a lot of it is tied up in a sense of morality about it being right or wrong and imposing that on other people, I think that's where it gets dangerous.
Yeah. Nice. Great distinction there. Thanks for pulling that apart. So we have about 19 minutes left, and I want to spend some of that time talking about polyamory. That's the other place that you were studying for a while. So tell us a bit about polyamory, and I'll tell you afterward. I'll tell you why this is so important, that I want to talk about that too. So, what do you know about polyamory, and what do you want to share with us?
Let's see. It's such a huge topic, but basically polyamory is, having more than one loving relationship with somebody. So it can look so many different ways, and there's so many books written about polyamory throughout the years, but some people have one partner, and it's more like partner non-monogamy, where you have one main person and you maybe have more casual relationships outside of that. Some people are committed to a full-on polyamorous lifestyle, which likely means multiple long-term love partnerships or multiple deep committed partnerships. Some people do it in a hierarchical fashion. They have a primary relationship and secondaries and tertiaries. Some people don't believe in the hierarchical model. So, essentially it just means loving more than one person and being open to loving more than one person.
Yeah, and being in relationship with more than one person.
Yeah, being in relationship in some fashion with more than one person. Right. I think it can look so different for different people.
Yeah. And so the reason why I want to spend some time on this one is that I just this week I was talking to Dr. Robert Dunlap, who's going to do a show with me more on this topic. Is that he and his and Dr. Patty has founded this sex coach university, so Sex Coach U, and they're training coaches to become sex coach. And he said that his business is expanding in the most surprising countries. And I said, well, where? He said, well, it's expanding in China and Poland, among many other countries, but China and Poland the most. And what these two countries are most interested in is to learn about polyamory.
Interesting.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. China and Poland. Interesting.
I know. And especially China. I'm like, okay, what's up with that, right? So, so he said for Poland, there is a pocket full of people who really truly believe that learning to love more than one person is the answer, the key to bringing world peace.
Wow.
And if you really think about it, I could see so much truth to that. Like when we just love one person in a monogamous structure, as much generosity and love it goes in there, there's still a sense of protection and seeing us against the world. You and me, and the rest is a threat to the you and me here. But when you
there's
learn
also a sense of ownership. I think that's a big part of it.
Totally right. And speaking of that ownership thing, I also was reading the book Sex at Dawn.
Yeah.
DAWN. And I love that whole teaching that they're saying, they tease out, like, in the last 10,000 years, since we shift from hunter and gathering to farming culture, that's where the whole concept of ownership comes in, and properties and separation came in. Before that, we had to live in clans and in groups and in communities, and we survive as a community, so we had to learn to share. I thought that was so profound to me, that's what happened to us as a structural society, and so that's how come we start to we own wives and own children so that we can protect ourselves and grow old and be safe and all that stuff. Fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so back to Poland, and so for them to see that when we learn to share and expand and be much more generous and trusting in our capacity to love and love more than one person, that's the key to world peace. I just think that is super cool.
It is super cool. There's also a woman named Wendy O'Maddock. She wrote a book called Redefining Our Relationships. And her philosophy is really similar. She has a philosophy of radical love, and she does radical love workshops all over the Bay Area. And she doesn't really even use the word polyamory, but talks a lot about how radical love is the freedom to love who you want, when you want, as long as integrity and honesty are a core part of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
I think that's where it's hard work, though, because I think the philosophy is inspiring and the philosophy is beautiful, and it's absolutely true. I agree. I think that if we could learn to love more than one person, if we had a larger capacity to love, that would absolutely lead to a more peaceful planet. And at the same time, we're so entrenched in the way relationships are supposed to be, and we've been taught that monogamy is how it's supposed to be, and we're supposed to have this type of relationship with other people if we're in a monogamous relationship. So it's just a lot to break down, and there's not a lot of support for it. There's not statistically a ton of people doing open relationships and poly relationships. There's a lot of people cheating on each other, so we know that it's not actually easy for most people to be monogamous, but it's almost less taboo to be in a monogamous relationship and cheat on someone than it is to be in an open relationship.
Oh, my God. I can't tell you. Oh, my God. So in my last 5 years of my marriage with my husband, we actually agreed to open up our marriage. And it was very open. Nobody cheated on anybody. We were very innocent, and we thought that should be easy just because we had a good relationship. Oh, no. Anyway, that's beside the point. So I chose to be really open about that with my closest friends. So my one girlfriend, I told her publicly, this is what's happening between me and my ex-husband, and we decided to open our marriage up, and I'm having, lovers that come in and all this stuff. So she sat with it for 3 months or so, and at first, she sounded really excited about it, and then she was just one day she just blew up at me, and she goes, I don't get it. I don't get you and your husband, you guys I think there's some psychological disorder in you or something. How could you possibly be open about these things and be honest about this? I can understand it if you're having an affair, and I can support you with that. But you being open about this and talking freely about this, I just can't support you around that. OMG, right? I was just so floored. I was like, wow, that's where things are with people around this thing. It's acceptable to have an affair, and people can understand it. And in fact, nowadays there are these services that encourage, that is growing leaps and bounds around the world that encourage affairs. You can go to this place and they'll hook up affairs for you. And I'm just blast. It's just amazing to me that is what's happening.
Yeah, because, having affairs and cheating behind people's backs, it's still maintaining the social order and the social norm.
The social order that we're maintaining.
Yeah, you're still even if you're not doing it in practice, you're not actually supporting monogamy in your the way you're living your life. I think that I think people are really connected to the idea of it and the facade of it and the performance of monogamy, and I don't know. I think it's a really hard thing for people to loosen their grip on. And it's also, and I say that with understanding also. Huh?
Yeah. No, I totally understand this place because I'm in it too. You know, it's just like on one hand, it's like it's so much safer and there's so much more peace when you're monogamous with someone. It's like, you know, we're not threatened. We don't have to have a conversation every day about, okay, who are you going to do with today, and when are you coming home, and how's that impacting me? What mood am I in, and do I feel safe with this person or not, and are you going to leave me now? You know, because somehow there seems to be like some guarantee that you're not going to leave me. You know, like there's an illusion.
If you're monogamous?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's an illusion. Yeah.
It is. Well, yeah, and they can argue so fairly that, you know, well, yeah, because you're going to go and kiss that guy and you're going to do that with him. So how would I know that that's not going to taste and feel better than what we have here, and then you're going to want more of that than here, right? So there's this whole mentality of comparing and protection and ownership that, you know, that we talked about. So I can see the quote-unquote illusion of peacefulness in monogamous.
I mean, it's an illusion and it's not. I do feel like it's a lot of work to be in open relationships. I do feel like you have to process a lot. Again, like we've been raised to think that relationships are supposed to be a certain way. So it can take a lot of emotional work, and not everybody has the energy or desire to do that, and I think that's totally fine.
Yep.
And I think it's an illusion in that, of course, anyone at any time could leave you, whether they leave you for somebody else, whether they walk out the door and get hit by a bus. Like, we don't actually have control over that. You know, I do think that sometimes, I mean, when you're introducing new people and more people, there is a chance that someone could connect with that person, but there's always the chance. So
that's right.
I don't know.
No, yeah. And it also takes a lot of work to be in a monogamous relationship. I mean, like to find this person anew every day, to find the passion, to find the joy and the love, to keep choosing that instead of choosing all the other stuff that we could choose is also a whole lot of work, and there's no illusion there.
Yeah, and it's harder for some people than others to be monogamous. Right. Like, I think some people are not naturally, some people should not be monogamous, and some people it really works for them. So I think it's really an individual choice, too.
Totally. Anyway, we have just had such a lovely conversation. I knew we would go to town with both of these subjects, so thank you so much for being here. Before we go, will you please tell them what, how they can find you, what you do, a little bit more specific, and like, you know, why would someone come to you?
Okay. So I do workshops all over the country pretty much. I've done workshops at Good Vibrations in the Bay Area and in Boston, so a lot of different sex-positive stores. You can find me on my website. My website is www.juliannelovesme.com, and you spell my name Julianne. So what I offer in addition to workshops is I do one-on-one coaching sessions with clients. Mm-hmm. So I meet with people over a long period of time or shorter blocks of time, and I work with people around relationship issues, sex issues, sexuality issues, and a lot of my specialty does go towards people who are in queer relationships or in non-monogamous relationships or negotiating some type of non-monogamous relationships. But I work with a broad cross-section of people, and all the information is on my website.
Excellent. So JulianneLovesMe.com. How fun.
JulianneLovesMe.com.
That's a great URL, by the way. That's very savvy.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that one.
Thank you.
But do you get clients that mistaken you for a sex worker, or wanting, like, thinking that as part of the service that you will pay?
Yeah, there are definitely people who do that. There's people who I think mistake, and then there's always, there's people who call you up and are looking for something else. But you just make clear what you're actually available for, and
right.
Yeah,
I could see how they would do that. I mean, I love that name, and when I said I love that name, I started to think, oh wait, would people start to mistake to think that, ooh, Julianne loves me, ha ha ha, let's see how much she loves me, kind of thing. Oh my gosh. And so it is. That's we get projected on all the time. So anyway.
Yep, it comes with the territory.
thank you so much, everyone, for listening and enjoying this show. If you enjoy this conversation, please share and like the show and share it with your community and your friends. And also, I also do a bi-weekly Google Hangout on sex, anything sex related actually. And there on the Hangout, I bring together like 5 to 10 other players and other sex experts and all this. My community come together and we talk real about what we're facing, what's happening with sex and anything sex related. So it's really fun and dynamic. And the next one is this coming Thursday, which is July 11th, I think. Oops, sorry, my calendar went away. Yeah, July 11th, so next Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific. So the Google Hangout is on then. And it's going to be on orgasmic meditation. If you don't know what that is, this would be a great conversation for you. It's a great spiritual practice that involves using your clitoris. How fun could that be, right? So much better than sitting on a pillow. And and then if you do know about orgasmic meditation and would like to join the conversation, just RSVP and let me know. So it's on Google Plus, Sex, Lies, and Consciousness Radio Presents. So anyway, have a wonderful week, everyone, and great weekend. And I will come talk to you on Monday. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.